Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Have you recovered? Have you recovered from one of the wildest weekends of college football we may have ever seen? I know that I personally have not. But we have to move forward. Time goes on. And it all starts, guys, with this. Our GE Top 25 heading into Week 8 of this college football season. A Week 8 that follows up what was an unbelievable Week 7. On Week 7, where 8 top 25 teams went down. 6 of those coming in ranked versus ranked matchups. Teams like Alabama and Oklahoma State and USC all falling to their opponents. An unbelievable weekend, guys, that saw major shakeups in our rankings, and we're here to break it all down for you today, explaining why we have these teams ranked where they are, explaining why we believe this is better than the AP poll. A poll here at the Gridiron Expert that is unbiased, that is well thought out, that is based on the results that happen on the field. So, before we get started, guys, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Take a look at our last video to see our numbers, but they are beating out over 80% of the national analysts and handicappers, guys. Over 60% against the spread, over 81% on the money line. You do not want to miss out on our expert picks, guys. And it's right there for you for one of the lowest prices in the entire country, only over on thegridironexpert.com. Check those out and become a part of our GE Nation today. So let's dive into these rankings, guys. I mean, we'll try to go through them as quick as possible. But another unbelievable weekend of college football saw some major shakeups in our rankings, namely right up here at number 2. Look at that, Rocky Top, baby. Rocky Top is near the top. Tennessee coming in at number 2, just behind Georgia. We cannot put Tennessee above Georgia, although the Volunteers' resume very, very strong, and obviously Tennessee rising to this spot after their win over Alabama, defeating the Crimson Tide 52-49, their first victory over Alabama in 15 years. Georgia takes the number 1 spot. We had Alabama at number 1 last week. Georgia takes the number 1 spot over Ohio State, over Tennessee, but the Volunteers right behind them. The margin very, very thin. Georgia beating Vanderbilt 55-0. Tennessee rising up 4 spots after their win over Alabama. Ohio State was on a bye week. They are still in at number 3, dropping a spot only because of Tennessee doing what they did to Alabama. And then Michigan coming in at 4. So our top 4 right now, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, and Michigan. How interesting, the top 2 teams are from the SEC East. Not the West, not one of each, both in the East. That doesn't happen very often, if at all. But Georgia, Tennessee, number 1 and number 2 in our rankings. Michigan, though, coming in at number 4, jumping Clemson. The Wolverines jumping into the top 4 over the Tigers after their dominant victory over Penn State. They trailed the Nittany Lions 17-16 early in the third quarter, then scored 25 unanswered points to beat the Nittany Lions 41-17. And against a team that was allowing less than 80 rushing yards per game, Michigan put up 418 rushing yards on that Penn State defense. So that, to me, with the 24-point victory, with the absolute dominance up front, Michigan deserves to leapfrog Clemson, who got a quality win on the road at Florida State, but beat them 34-28, and were outgained in that game as well. So Clemson's still looking really, really good. Still a great football team. Still a team that easily will make the college football playoff if they win the ACC, assuming they're undefeated. But right now, 5th behind Clemson. Alabama. Not very often you see them outside the top 3, right? Alabama in at number 6, dropping 5 spots in our rankings following their loss to Tennessee. Look, Alabama's still a really good team, guys, and now they're put in a spot similar to that of last year where they lost to Texas A&M, but won out, including the SEC championship over Georgia. If Alabama does that again, whether it's against Georgia or Tennessee in the SEC championship, the Crimson Tide are in the college football playoffs. There's 6 now in our rankings. They won't be most likely in the top 4 with the AP poll. That's fine. They have a lot of time to make it up. Still have quality games coming up against LSU and Ole Miss. Guys like that to continue to boost their resume. But again, the margin for error is slim for Alabama. But if they win out, including the win in the SEC championship, they're in the playoff. The one loss does not ruin their season, but does ruin them from the top spot, does ruin them from the top 4 for now. Crimson Tide in at 6, but there's not a team below them right now that I could justify putting above Alabama. Some would say TCU. I don't think so. TCU, phenomenal victory over Oklahoma State, taking down the Cowboys 43-40 in double overtime. But I think if you put these two teams on a neutral field right now, I do not think that TCU could take down Alabama. So giving the Crimson Tide in at 6 over a TCU team that deserves to be in the top 10, that right now is the Big 12's best chance of getting a team into the college football playoff. The lone undefeated team in the Big 12. But TCU in at 7 behind Alabama. Again, huge game for them coming up against Kansas State this Saturday. Watch out for the Horned Frogs and the Wildcats. We'll have analysis on that game later this week as well. Oregon in at number 8. They had a bye week. UCLA had a bye week as well. They play each other this week, the site of College Game Day in Eugene. Huge for the Pac-12, not just for the title hopes, but for the playoff hopes as well. UCLA, the last remaining unbeaten team in the Pac-12, travels to Eugene. If Oregon wins that, though, they could easily be the Pac-12's best chance of making the college football playoff. Lots at stake on Saturday afternoon. Oregon and UCLA going to be a very, very fun, high-scoring matchup. They come in at 8 and 9. And then Oklahoma State rounding out our top 10 guys. Some would say, how are they still in the top 10? Why didn't they drop out? Well, watch the TCU game. Oklahoma State was dominating that game. TCU didn't even tie it. TCU never led in the game until the game was over. Until it was over. That's when they took their lead, right? TCU did not tie the game until there was under 2 minutes left in the game. So Oklahoma State was dominating the game. They were doing very good defensively. They were doing a great job offensively. And this Oklahoma State team is still really, really solid. Keep in mind last year, guys, Oklahoma State lost earlier in the year. Had a one loss. Still could have almost made the college football playoff had they defeated Baylor in the Big 12 championship. So their playoff hopes are not entirely done. This is still a very good team, a very talented team. They lost by 3 on the road in double overtime. Doesn't justify me dropping them. We dropped them 3 spots. I don't think it justifies dropping them 5, 6, 7 spots. The Cowboys are still better to me than Ole Miss, than Utah, than Wake Forest, than Syracuse. They're still a top 10 team in my eyes, and still could have a shot to have a rematch against TCU in the Big 12 championship game, just like they had against Baylor last year as well. So watch out for the Cowboys, guys. Bad, heartbreaking loss on the road. Season not done. Still a top 10 team here at the Gridiron Expert. Over in the second column, Ole Miss rising up 2 spots. They were 13th last week. They defeated Auburn 48-34. The Ole Miss defense looking a little shaky. Has not looked great so far this season. Got a lot of points to Vanderbilt last week. Allowed Tank Bigsby and Auburn to run all over them in Oxford. Ole Miss is good, but the first half of their schedule has been very, very favorable. Let's see how they fare coming up. A road game at LSU. That's going to be tough. They've got Alabama. They've got A&M. They've got Arkansas. A lot of tougher teams on the back half of the schedule. That will show me whether or not Ole Miss is a top 10 team. The AP thinks so. We have yet to rank Ole Miss in our top 10 this season. I just haven't bought into the Rebel hype yet. Haven't really played anybody. So Ole Miss in at 11. Utah up 5 spots. 5 spots for Utah in our rankings, guys, following their win over USC. They defeated the Trojans 43-42 in Salt Lake City. What an unbelievable finish, guys. The Utes tying the game, having a chance to tie it with 48 seconds left in the game, choosing to go for 2 in the win. They got it. Cam Rising scoring on both the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Utah, guys, 2 losses. They're out of the playoff race, but they're still in the Pac-12 title race, and obviously are going to affect who wins that and maybe who makes the playoff. They've lost to UCLA. They still play Oregon later in the year. That has major playoff implications depending on how the Ducks fare. They already beat USC. That could ruin the Trojans' playoff hopes. Utah's a good team, guys. We predicted them to win in Salt Lake City. They came through for us. This is still a dang good football team, and it showed on Saturday. The Utes up 5 all the way to number 12. Over Wake Forest, who had a bye week. They benefited from some teams losing ahead of them, moving up a spot. And then how about Syracuse? One of the biggest risers in our rankings this week. We had the Cuse, the Orange, at 21st last week. Now they are 14th, jumping 7 spots. Part of that is due to who lost ahead of them. Teams like NC State, who Syracuse beat, Mississippi State, who fell to Kentucky, USC, who clearly fell to Utah. But Syracuse is good, guys. Best start since 1987. Their defense is phenomenal. And the offense, very balanced and dangerous on the ground. Garrett Schrader can run it. Sean Tucker can run it. And Schrader's passing ability has improved drastically from last year. 24-9 victory over NC State at the Carrier Dome sets up a huge showdown on the road at Clemson for the Atlantic Division on Saturday. So we should have a top 15 showdown between the Tigers and the Orange in Death Valley. Saturday we'll have more analysis on that game later in the week, but Syracuse, they're the real deal. Major credit to Dino Babers and his squad this season. Kansas State rising up 3 spots. Had a bye week. Just benefited from some teams that lost ahead of them. So Kansas State rising 3. Again, big game against TCU. Huge for the Big 12 and their standings on Saturday. Kansas State wins that. They are in the college football playoff discussion. Lone loss to Tulane. That's going to hurt them, but they rack up enough quality victories that the committee will overlook that. So Kansas State in at 15. How about Illinois? Another big riser in our rankings as well. The Fighting Illini rising 8. We had them in the lower part of our rankings last week. Wanted to see what they could do against Minnesota. And when you beat a good Minnesota team by 12, yeah, you deserve to rank 16th. You deserve to rise up 8 spots. Chase Brown, phenomenal game. What do you have, like 180 yards against that Minnesota defense? Tommy DeVito doing great things. And that Illinois defense, guys, is phenomenal. Illinois' defense is phenomenal. Give credit to Brett Bielema. Give credit to his staff and this team, guys, for what they are doing. They're going bowling. That was something that we didn't think they would do. I missed the mark in Illinois big time. This is a team that not only is going bowling, but it could easily make the Big Ten championship game. That's how good and dominant this Illinois team has been so far this year. So big win over Wisconsin, big win over Minnesota. Watch out for the Fighting Illini, guys. They are 16th above USC, and some will criticize that, but here's the thing. We've never been high on USC. We actually dropped them 6 spots. We had them at 11th last week. We never had them in the top 10 either. USC had yet to play anyone. The lone tough test they had was in Corvallis against Oregon State. They needed a touchdown with under 2 minutes left to win that game. I was never sold on USC, and while they looked good against Utah, they still were unable to come out with the win. The defense still a handicap for the Trojans. So they dropped to 17th. Strength of schedule simply isn't there. Utah being their first true test, and they dropped it. Still could find their way back up, could still win the Pac-12. Only one loss, but to me, 15-17 is about the right range for them, not near the top 10 like the AP and many others have had them for most of the year. So USC dropping 6 spots to number 17. Kentucky rising 5 spots to number 18 following their 10-point victory over Mississippi State. Amazing what a healthy Will Levis will do for a team, and obviously what a run game will do. Chris Rodriguez finally finding his swagger, getting it back with a dominant performance against the Bulldogs. Kentucky rising up 5 spots. Penn State dropping 10 following their loss to Michigan. Like we mentioned earlier, just another bad road performance from James Franklin against a quality opponent. It seems to happen every single year. The hype for Penn State gets there. They face one good team, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, someone like that, and they fall. And usually it's not in a very close fashion. Usually it's in a blowout fashion. So Penn State dropping 10 spots after their loss to Michigan. Purdue rounding out our top 20 with a 6-point victory over Nebraska. The Boilermakers are quietly stringing together a handful of victories. Their only losses this year are to Penn State and Syracuse, 2 teams that we have ranked in our top 20. They're stringing together victories, and they could set up a huge showdown in a few weeks against Illinois. The winner takes the Big Ten West. Watch out for the Boilermakers. Over in our final 5, Texas jumping into our rankings, guys. You know, they were right on the outside looking in. We jumped them all the way up to 21st, not 25th, although they're lucky to be that high after their narrow victory over Iowa State, a game where I truly believe that the Longhorns were lucky to escape and the Cyclones got robbed. You know, Xavier Hutchinson should have caught that deep ball. That's on him. But then I do feel like Hunter Decker's knee was down. I do feel like there was targeting on that play. A lot of questionable calls down the stretch that could have led to an Iowa State victory, but regardless, Texas gets it, escapes again. The Longhorns, were they 5-2 now under Steve Sarkisian? Huge win for them following their Oklahoma victory. They jump into 21st. Mississippi State down 6 following their loss to Kentucky. They were 16th in our rankings last week, dropping 6 following the loss to the Wildcats on the road by 10. North Carolina rising 2 spots after their 3-point victory over Duke, a game that had major Coastal Division implications. North Carolina narrowly escaped past their in-state rival and sits atop of those coastal standings. So it's huge. Could be North Carolina. Imagine if it was North Carolina and Syracuse in the ACC Championship. Who would have predicted that? So watch out for the Tar Heels, guys. Defense still shaky, but offense getting the job done. NC State down 9 following their loss to Syracuse. Syracuse 18th in the country last week in the AP poll. Syracuse, we just mentioned them. NC State losing Devin Leary for the rest of the year. We're keeping them in the top 25 for now, giving them the benefit of the doubt, but right on the outside looking in. One more loss, and they're out. So NC State barely holding on to their spot. Only losses on the road to Syracuse, on the road to Clemson. So don't, to me, deserve dropping them outside of the top 25. So they're holding on barely. And then we have one newcomer here, Cincinnati. So Texas and Cincinnati, the 2 newcomers in our rankings this week. A lot of the teams staying in, but the Bearcats have been on the outside looking in for a while. Last week, they were the team that was ranked 26 in our rankings. First team out, if you will. They had a bye week, but because of the teams that kind of dropped out, because of a couple teams that have lost, we bumped Cincinnati in there. And there was no team that was unranked other than Texas that we felt deserved to jump into the top 25 due to a victory they had this weekend. So Cincinnati, being right there on the outside, gets to finally move back into the top 25 where they were to start the season. So there you go, guys. Week 8, top 25. It is crazy, guys. I mean, who would have thought this point in the season, Tennessee would be ranked 2nd, Syracuse would be ranked 14th, Illinois would be a top 20 team. I mean, these rankings are insane. I know they're not the AP poll, I know they're the committee's poll, but we believe they're better than that. because we watch the games. We study the game. We look at the numbers. We know what happens. We know who gets hurt. We know what flags were thrown. We know how the game ended. We know some scores were closer than the game really was. We know some games, were not nearly as close as they say. Well, there's a lot of things that go into it that the AP does not take into consideration. We do here at the Gridiron Expert. So these are our rankings heading into Week 8, and that will launch our predictions coming out this week. Lots of more ranked versus ranked matchups. We're going to have analysis for every single one of those games only right here on the channel. So stay tuned and get ready for what will hopefully be another unbelievable weekend of college football. So once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. We want you to check those out. Sign up for those today and become a part of our GE Nation. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.